Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this fine Sunday. I hear there's some kind of a game going on later. I don't really know what it is. Oh, Super Bowl Sunday, which happens to fall on our second Sunday's concert series day. So what a coincidence. I am Marisa Buckheit. I'm the music director here, and I'm thrilled to welcome all of you who are both part of our church family as well as our guests. We're very excited about this free concert series that we host monthly during our regular season, September through May. We feature some of Chicago's most prominent, emerging, talented artists, mostly in the classical and jazz domain, and we're very excited to feature a fantastic artist today. A little bit of housekeeping for those of you who are guests. We do have bathrooms downstairs should you need to go at any time. I'd like to acknowledge our Concordia Church as well as our vision, which is bringing our neighbors together to experience God's love through inspiring music. This concert today is not only live for your enjoyment, but it will also be live streamed. Thank you, Matt. And if you are interested in contributing, we do have a QR code on the program where you can explore gifts, and we also have that online if you go to concordiafaith.org and go to the Gifts tab. We'd like to recognize our Benefactor Society, which are those who are our largest donors for the concert series and allow us to have not only these free concerts, but also our special gala and event concerts, including the one that we have coming up on Saturday, the Valentine's Gala, which I'll talk about a little bit more at the end. At this time, I would like to first acknowledge that it is African American History Month, and because of that, for those of you who attend our church, you may have noticed we've featured anthems by Black composers this month, but we also are featuring a very talented young artist in Chicago who will be speaking and also featuring some works of Black composers. Let me tell you a little bit about harpist Jordan Thomas. Jordan is an international harpist as well as a Grammy Award winner. He's been performing and playing the harp since the age of 9. He's been invited to play at the Kennedy Center for their Conservatory Marathon project, and actually was the only harpist invited to play there. He's performed at the Aspen Music Festival. He's the first place winner of the American Protege International Concerto Competition, which he won in 2013, and later went on to perform at the Weill Recital Hall of Carnegie Hall in New York. He earned his master's degree at Peabody University on the East Coast, and he actually made his way to Chicago here to do his professional diploma in orchestral studies at Chicago College of Performing Arts. He studies with Chicago principal harpist, lyric opera of Chicago principal harpist Lynn Williams, and by the way, he also is employed at the Lyric Opera, which I love, as arts administrator. As I said, he's had many exciting performances, including during the pandemic time, performing on a CBS John Lewis special with none other than Jennifer Hudson. Yes. At this time, I would like to invite the wonderful Jordan Thomas to the stage. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Super Bowl Sunday. I'm just kidding. I'm very excited to present this program to you. It is a program that I've been working on since the great times of COVID, of African American composers, mostly composers that are not really played as much in these times. I loved watching documentaries and doing research. And so I said, what a fun project to just explore composers that were great at that time, but aren't playing in concert halls anymore. And so I found a great group of composers, and I arranged them for the harp. Some of the pieces I really wanted to do, I could not do because the harp is already complicated as it is, and just didn't work. But I found a really good group of pieces. So the first piece I would like to perform is the well-known Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is considered the African American national anthem. It was written first as a poem, and then set to music. And it was premiered by 500 school students in Jacksonville, Florida. And then as time went on and the civil rights movement went on, the poem and music became more and more popular. It brought comfort to the people. And so I wanted to do this arrangement written by my very good friend, Brandy Younger, who is a jazz harpist who I know very well and actually has won a Grammy as well. And I asked her, can I do this? And she said, absolutely. And so I hope you enjoy Lift Every Voice and Sing. Okay, so the next piece on the program, you have to forgive me, I have notes. There's so much information about these composers that are wonderful that I don't want to forget anything, is Adoration by Florence Price. Florence Price was the first Black woman composer to have a symphony performed by a major orchestra. Any guesses which orchestra it is? Chicago, yes. It was her Symphony No. 1 in E minor, which they recorded, and actually she's making a huge comeback. Her pieces are now being rediscovered and performed more often, which is wonderful. And recently at the Grammys keep on popping up somehow, a recording entitled Beyond Years, which was performed with Karen Slack soprano, and Michelle Cain on the piano won Grammy for Best Solo Album in the classical category, which is absolutely phenomenal. Florence was originally from Arkansas, and then she was a child prodigy on piano and composition. And she moved up to Chicago, and she actually published her first piece at age 11, which is quite amazing. She has composed more than 300 compositions, including music for piano, organ, popular songs, concertos for both violin and piano, 4 symphonies, and many vocal works. Adoration is originally composed for the organ, and for me, I think it just sounds much better on the harp, which is the case for most of the pieces, but it brings a much more not a fuller sound, but a much more subtle, much more calm sound to the piece than, with the organ, even though the organ is a grand instrument and has been on my bucket list to learn. I just think on the harp, it just brings much more warmth to it. So I hope you enjoy Adoration by Florence Price. next piece is by Thomas, quote unquote, blind Thomas Bethune-Wiggins. Now, he was an American pianist and composer. He was born blind, and because of that, he wasn't able to do the mandatory work that slaves were supposed to do at that time, so he was allowed to explore the plantation. He heard the sound of a piano, which was played by the plantation owner's daughter, and he became very fascinated with it, and he allowed him to actually play the piano. And because his senses were so good, he could interpretate anything that he heard. And so, noticing his talent, the owner's like, okay, let's do something about this. Let's let him be who he is and let him play. He started at the age of 4, and his first tune was written at the age of 5, which depicted the sound of rain. And according to sources, he would practice 12 hours a day. I can't do that. But he would, even if it was required of him or not, he would practice 12 hours a day. He started touring the southern states at age 6, and by age 8, a concert promoter heard him, said, I want you to be a part of my agency. And he toured all across the US, making a sum of $100,000 a year, which today is $3.5 million. Not bad, okay? He was the very first African American to give a command performance at the White House in 1860 before President James Buchanan. And he composed so many wonderful pieces. And by the age of, the age of 45, he passed away, very young. And his pieces just went into the shelves, and no one really performed his pieces a lot. It's a very sad story also because all the money he did touring the United States, he never got to see, or his family never got to see because his promoter and his slave owner took all his money. They took advantage of him, which is very sad. But he wrote so many wonderful, beautiful music. And the piece I'm going to perform is called Water in the Moonlight, which starts off very slowly, very calm. I can just picture him just being near a river, and you can just hear the gentle rustlings of the water, and then it grows and grows into this grand finale. And it's so wonderful, and it's such a beautiful, it's a simple piece, but it's a magnificent piece at the same time. So I hope you enjoy Water in the Moonlight. Okay, so our next composer is Nathaniel Deet, who is actually a Canadian American. He was a composer, excuse me, this is a long list, so bear with me. A composer, an organist, a pianist, a choral director, and a professor of music. He was born and raised in Canada until the age of 11 and moved to the US to continue his professional education and career. He was actually the very first African American to complete the Bachelor of Music degree at Oberlin, for which he studied composition and piano. He is well known for composing pieces or arranging pieces of American folk songs or spirituals in the Romantic style. The piece I'm playing is actually the second movement of a suite he wrote, which is called Cinnamon Grove. He was very interested in poetry, and 3 out of the 4 movements are based on poems, and I would like to read you the very, very short poem that this movement is inspired by. When thou commandest me to sing, it seems that my heart would break with pride, and I look to thy face, and tears come down my eyes. It's a very beautiful piece. It's full of very rich harmonies, beautiful chords. Again, it sounds like it could be written by Mahler or one of those, as I like to call the meat and potato composers that we so love and adore. And I hope you enjoy it. You have to forgive me. 2 of my strings popped yesterday, thanks to the weather, and there's a very famous saying that harpists spend 50% of their times tuning and the rest of the 50 playing out of tune, which is definitely the case. reminds me of Mahler 5 in a way, the Daciano movement. Okay, so the next, well, this man doesn't need any introduction. Scott Joplin, well-known composer who wrote the famous The Entertainer, The Ragtime, the Maple Leaf Rag, thank you. And he was a very amazing composer. The piece that I'm actually going to feature is the finale of his second opera that he wrote. I didn't know he wrote two. He wrote two, but his more famous one is called Tremonisha, which has lately been getting a comeback. The St. Louis Opera just did it. And he was towards the end of his life, was really obsessed with writing this opera. He wanted it to be grand, he wanted the full shebang. And so not only did he write the music, he wrote the libretto, he choreographed it, and produced it himself. It was semi-performed during his time, and unfortunately he died of syphilis. And what was really amazing, even though his mental state was not that great, he was so committed to making this opera work and really show the different side of his musical abilities and not just writing ragtime music. And so the piece is called A Real Slow Drag. At the end of the opera, the African community and another tribe at that time were at battle with each other. And so Tremonisha, the title character, was a very wise woman and was able to resolve everything. And at the end, they celebrated by doing this dance. Please don't ask me to do the dance. I don't know the choreography. But it's a really fun piece, and I'm really glad that it is making a comeback, because the whole opera itself, there is a recording of it, a famous recording that was made by the Houston Grand Opera. If you haven't heard the whole entire thing, I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful piece, and I wish that, Scott Joplin could have seen the glory of this opera could have been, or is, not could have been, is. And I hope that opera companies continue to do more of this production. As many of my friends know, I'm obsessed with opera. It's one of my biggest passions. And no, I will not be singing, even though I do have a microphone. I wish I could sing it to you, but anyway, it's a really fun piece, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so the next three pieces are spirituals. Can't have a Black History concert without some spirituals. I don't really, how can I say this? There's two stories behind why I chose these pieces. I don't come from a very musical family. I'm the odd sheep of the family. Most of them are teachers, lawyers, doctors, you know, the steady job. And I'm the musician. But they were very supportive, but the main family that was very supportive of my musical journey was my church family. I went to St. Louis Episcopal Church, and we did a lot of music, like very big anthems. We did Handel's Messiah every single year. And that's where I really got my start. One of my early mentors, Dr. Dangerfield Cooper, saw that I was very interested. As a kid, my grandmother was a part of the flower arranging committee. And well, I was there, and she's like, okay, now you sit there and read your book and don't move. What do? I move. And so I would go up to the organ. Somehow I knew how to turn on the organ. And they're just cleaning or just doing the flowers. All you hear is like, man, 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 man. And the organist came up to me and was like, kid, you got talent. And so he encouraged me to study piano, and I started piano at age 3. And he and my grandmother took me to the Philadelphia Orchestra concerts, would take me to chamber concerts. And they were very supportive of when I made the switch to harp. They thought it was a really great thing, even though my mother thought I was crazy. She's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. And so while I was studying music and I was starting to do recitals and programming recitals, Dr. Cooper came up to me and he said, kid, when you're programming concerts, know that spirituals are just as important as a Bach or a Mozart piece. And I said, oh, okay, great, sure. And he said, you don't get it. It's a part of our history. It's a part of our story. And you need to show that. And I said, understood. And so every time I do a concert, I try to put in a spiritual or two in there. But the story behind one of the spirituals, Little David Play on Your Harp, was there's this lady at the church who always called me David. He said, you look like a David, you should have been named David. And I said, well, you know, my name is Jordan. She's like, okay, David. I'm like, okay, great. And so no matter how many times I corrected her or my mother tried, she's like, David, it's always David. And when I did my first concert at the church, when it was announced, she said, David, you better play Little David Play on Your Harp, because that's your name. And I said, okay, all right, I guess I will. And so I did my concert, and she came up to me, Jordan, that was great. And I was like, okay, great. And so I always love that story, so I picked that one. But over my head, the reason why I combined these two pieces is because there was a concert done at Carnegie Hall called Spirituals in Concert, which starred Jesse Norman and Kathleen Battle, which honored the contralto Marian Anderson. And it was the New York Phil, James Levine was conducting, and it was just such a grand and gorgeous concert. And in the middle of the program, Kathleen Battle stepped aside from the maestro or where she was standing to go over to the side stage where the harpist was Nancy Allen, who's the principal harpist of the New York Phil, and a flautist, and I forgot his name, I'm so sorry. And they did these two pieces, and I was like, I need to grab that arrangement. And so while I was in college, I was accepted to the Aspen Music Festival where Nancy Allen was teaching. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is finally the moment I can get it from her and I can perform it. So all summer I kept on asking her, like, can I have this arrangement? Really? And she's like, yeah, of course, I'll give it to you. I'm still waiting. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing. And so what I wanted to envision with these two pieces is not only, little David playing your harp and what the harp can do, but also the beauty of nature. For over my head, I hear music in the air. And so it's, you'll hear different things on the harp, extended techniques, and it's just very pretty and beautiful, very harpy. And then the third piece is an arrangement of Joshua Fit the Battle of Jericho, which is a very jazzy version of it. It's in variations. And what I love about it, it includes me knocking on the soundboard, and it's totally okay, it doesn't harm the harp, to represent the drums beating, because they're in battle. And the very end, I won't give it away, but you definitely hear that the walls truly do come down. So I hope you enjoy these three spirituals. I just want to thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It's been such a pleasure performing for you. The last piece is a piece written by Will Marin, who is a wonderful composer. He actually studied violin at first, and then moved over to Berlin to study for 9 years, and then in hopes of creating a name for himself, both as a composer and a soloist, went back to the United States, and he actually studied composition with the famous Czech composer Dvorak. And because of the troubles and the segregation of the concert halls, he decided to not become a classical artist and move on to musical theater, actually. And he actually produced the very first all-black cast Broadway show on Broadway. And this medley overture of Clorinde, The Origins of the Cakewalk, is a very fun piece. It was actually the very first thing I picked up and arranged. And it's a real showstopper, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for inviting me to play and being in this wonderful space. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
What a magnificent recital. Thank you so much, Jordan Thomas, for gracing us with your beautiful instrument and presence today. I also learned a lot. Didn't know Scott Joplin wrote an opera, for example. But let's hear it for him one more time. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks all for being here. Our next Second Sundays is March 9th. It'll feature Andrew Marlin Bassoon, and on Saturday we do have our St. Valentine's Day Gala, so we do hope to see you Saturday evening. Thank you and enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday.